Have you ever heard of Frodo, Aragorn, Gandalf? But what about Balin? That's right. Most people don't even remember him, and those who do usually only recall a dark tomb lost within the halls of Moria. But what almost no one knows, and if you dare to tell, is that Balin was one of the most important characters in all of Middle-earth, a silent hero, a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and legacy. This is the story they never told you, the tale of a dwarf who faced dragons, maddened, kings, orcs, and ancient shadows, and yet still stood tall, not for glory, but for purpose. And maybe, just maybe, the journey of Balin has more to do with your life than you can imagine, because the truth is harsh. Many die before they even truly live. Not Balin. Balin lived with everything he had, and that's why today we're going to recount his journey. If you've ever felt forgotten, underestimated, or like you're fighting battles that no one sees, this story is for you. Because Balin is the hero of the resilient, of those who carry on even when the light goes out. And by learning his story, something inside you, something ancient and powerful, will awaken. So take a deep breath, clear your mind, and come with me. Because what you're about to hear will change everything. Khazad-dûm wasn't just an underground city. It was the beating heart of an empire forged by the patience and hammer of the long-beard dwarves. Imagine living beneath colossal mountains, where every tunnel bore the mark of ancestral perseverance. Moria, as the elves called it, was a living symbol of dwarven glory, illuminated by the rare shine of mithril. And at the center of it all, like a flame that never wavered, was the wisdom of Durin. If you could walk through those galleries today, you'd still feel the echo of drums and the scent of the forge. But not everything that glitters is safe. The hidden power of mithril, light as silence and stronger than steel, brought with it a dark price. Greed, even when veiled by good intentions, pushed the dwarves to dig deeper than they should have. And as the old saying in Middle-earth goes, if you poke a sleeping cave, one day you'll wake what lies within. That's exactly what happened when they awakened Durin's bane. A young Balin grew up hearing whispers about this fatal mistake. Durin's bane, a Balrog of fire and shadow, emerged as a punishment from ancient times. What began as pride turned into panic, and the halls of Moria, once pulsing with life, were overtaken by a silence filled with mourning. The Longbeards, who had once been lords of the deep, became exiles in their own history. This tragedy shaped not only the destiny of the dwarves, but also the way Balin saw the world. He learned that even the most dazzling achievement can carry the poison of unbridled ambition. And here lies the hidden beauty of this part of the story. It teaches us about the limits of our own strength. You may have a successful business, an enviable title, or a razor-sharp productivity routine. But if you don't know when to stop, everything can crumble like the halls of Moria. The secret isn't to dig deeper, but to do it with awareness. If you're looking for a read that helps you see this in practice, I recommend Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. It's almost like having a wise dwarf whispering in your ear. Balin would carry these memories for the rest of his life, like a scar worn not in shame, but as a reminder. The echo of Middle-earth whispers that the past, no matter how dark, is a map for future decisions. And Balin's journey was only just beginning, because after the fall of Moria, the winds of destiny would still lead him to face creatures even more fiery. Dwarves are stubborn by nature, and not without reason. After the loss of Moria, the Longbeards didn't just stand around licking their wounds. They migrated in search of a new home, as solid as stone, guided by a mix of resilience and tradition. That's how they reached the Grey Mountains, where they tried to reclaim their glory. But Middle-earth, as Balin well knew, never made things easy. Dragons, hungry for treasures and territories, soon found in the dwarves a glistening target. These encounters with dragons weren't bedtime stories for children. They were nightmares that left ashes in place of kingdoms. Balin himself witnessed the horrors of these assaults, where flames consumed not only riches, but hope. Erebor seemed like a promising refuge, a new chance at prosperity, until Smaug appeared. The dragon descended from the skies like a divine punishment, and in 2770 reduced everything to ashes: gold, thrones, pride. It's like watching your startup get swallowed up by a market shift overnight. Smaug didn't just destroy Erebor, he dismantled a dream. The survivors, Balin among them, bore the weight of yet another expulsion. And that, my friend, translates very well into our world. How many times do we invest in something, believe, with all our heart, and then see it all collapse due to an uncontrollable variable? Today's dragon could be an economic crisis, burnout, or even a decision that seemed too right. And still, we carry on. But see, every tragedy brings with it a seed of reinvention. The dwarves, led by wandering kings with determined hearts, continued their march. Balin, even as he watched his land being taken over by claws and flame, never lost the spark of hope. The lesson here is simple yet powerful. Life will knock you down, sometimes with blazing elegance, but you decide whether to rise carrying ashes or lessons learned. If you have to change direction, do it with purpose. It's not about giving up. It's about starting over with more wisdom. And deep in Balin's soul, even in the face of loss and exile, there was still an idea beating like a distant drum. One day, Erebor would be reclaimed. And with it, perhaps something more. An opportunity to change not just destinies, but entire stories. That's where Thorin comes into play. For the dwarves, war was never a whim. It was a necessity. After so many losses, the fury against the orcs built up like magma beneath the mountain. Balin, now more mature and battle-scarred by the flames of Smaug and the mourning of Moria, wielded his axe with purpose. The war between dwarves and orcs wasn't just any battle. It was a saga of blood, honor, and revenge. And as every good storyteller would say, one does not enter Azanul Bizarre uninvited. The Battle of the Shadow Valley was a turning point of eras. The ground became soaked with the echoes of old grievances, and Balin saw brothers fall like shattered stone pillars. Even with the victory over the orcs in 2799, Khazad-dûm remained unreachable under the dominion of the Balrog. The irony is cruel. Winning a war yet still not being able to return home. It's like opening the door to your old home and realizing it no longer belongs to you. It's the kind of victory that hurts more than defeat. And here the story touches something deeply human. How many times do we fight like lions, achieve the impossible, and still feel like we haven't won? It could be that promotion you fought for years to get, but when you finally arrive, you realize you lost something along the way. Time with family, health, peace. Balin's story at this point is almost a mirror. Winning on the battlefield, but losing on the field of the soul. Despite everything, Balin did not become a bitter man. He became a wise man, a survivor who learned to read the silences of Middle-earth. And here's a practical tip. When you're living through one of those Azanul Bizarre moments in life, full of effort, blood, and pain, don't rush back into the fray. Reflect, write, read books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius or Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. They don't speak of axes, but they teach you how to survive internal battles. And even with so many scars, Balin would never abandon the idea of seeing Erebor free once again. He knew that destiny was still preparing something greater, and when Thorin raised his banner, the old warrior wouldn't hesitate. After all, the call of a true mission echoes louder than any war drum. When Thorin called, Balin was among the first to answer. Not because he was naive or starving for treasure, but because he felt deep in his beard that this call was different. It was the breath of a chance that life rarely gives, to rewrite one's own story. Imagine, after decades of exile, humiliation and battles, a hobbit, a wizard, and a plan to reclaim Erebor emerge. Does it sound crazy? Because it was. But sometimes it's precisely from madness that legends are born. The journey was anything but smooth. Hungry trolls, treacherous mountains, bloodthirsty orcs, and even giant spiders, all part of the Lonely Mountain Expedition package. And Balin, with his experience and keen eye, became a kind of silent advisor to Thorin. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a beacon, always alert, always ready to intervene when the king's pride threatened to sink the ship. In many moments, it was Balin who balanced Thorin's impulsiveness with Bilbo's curious heart. This journey, my friend, is a lot like many projects in life. You start out excited, motivated, with that wonderful flutter in your stomach. But soon, the obstacles, the unforeseen, the invisible enemies show up, and what seemed like a glorious path turns into a minefield. If you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And do you know the key? Having a Balin by your side. Someone experienced who's seen the worst, who isn't dazzled by empty promises, but moves by principles. Who are the Balins in your life today? And then came Smaug, the very terror of Erebor, slumbering atop a mountain of gold. The final battle, however, wasn't just against the dragon. It was against greed itself. Balin saw Thorin change, spiral into a dangerous, almost unrecognizable obsession, and yet he stayed. Not out of weakness, but out of loyalty. How many times have you seen someone get lost in power, in money, in ego, and still choose to stay out of love or honor? That's rarer than Mithril. The Battle of the Five Armies crowned this mission with blood and tears. Thorin fell, but Erebor was liberated. Balin survived once again, but something within him changed. The longing for Moria, suppressed for decades, began to whisper louder. And that's when the story took another turn, darker and more silent. The idea of returning to Moria never left Balin's mind. It was like a flame lit deep in his chest, quiet yet constant. After the victory at Erebor, he saw a new chance. A rise, not for gold, not for glory, but to restore something that had been brutally torn from his soul, the dignity of the Longbeards. In 2989, he gathered a small group and set out. To most, it seemed like madness. To him, it was an ancestral call, as if the stones of Moria still knew his name. And wouldn't you know it, at first, everything seemed to work. The halls that had once been empty echoed again with dwarf footsteps. Balin was proclaimed Lord of Moria, a powerful title, but one laden with responsibility and ghosts. The old kingdom began to take shape, forges rekindled, halls cleaned up, hope revived. Middle-earth even seemed to smile at him for a brief moment. And that teaches us something harsh. Not every initial success guarantees stability. Moria, deep down, was an emotional minefield. Balin knew that, but he pressed on, because some decisions are bigger than we are. Sometimes you have to try, even knowing the risk, like starting a business in a market dominated by giants or beginning again after a painful divorce. These are decisions that defy logic but answer to the soul. And no matter how many say it's insanity, there's that voice inside you, it's now or never. Balin listened to that voice, and he acted. But the shadows never truly left. The orcs' unwanted old residents returned with fury, and the echo of the Balrog still hung in the air as a living reminder of past mistakes. Balin was ambushed near the chamber of Mazarbul. It was there, among the meticulously carved columns, that the Lord of Moria fell. Without ceremony, without warning, a hero reduced to silence. If that doesn't give you a lump in your throat, maybe you still haven't grasped the true price of courage. His small colony was wiped out, and once again, the name of Moria vanished into the void, like a broken promise. But history isn't erased that easily, because what Balin planted there, with blood, with faith, with madness, still echoed, and one day someone would hear that echo, even if it came from an unexpected place, like a hobbit or a son of Gloin. Gimli wasn't just Gloin's son. He was the heir to memories that didn't always come in cheery songs. When the Fellowship of the Ring passed through the doors of Moria, his heart carried a thread of hope. Balin was his relative, his example, his mirror of courage. Perhaps he was alive, rebuilding the old kingdom. But as the halls grew darker and the echoes more sinister, hope shrank like a candle in a storm. Middle-earth, once again, showed that time is unforgiving. The discovery of Balin's tomb was like a punch to the soul. There he was, the great lord of Moria, reduced to ashes, surrounded by the dead and memories. The Book of Mazarbul recounted the colony's final moments, hastily scribbled amid attacks and despair. Imagine opening the diary of someone you love and reading, line by line as life fades away. Gimli didn't cry for nothing, and neither should we, because that was more than the end of an attempt. It was the end of an era. It's in these moments that we understand what true legacy is. Balin didn't leave behind castles. He didn't leave children. But he left a story that still beats today, like the hammers of dwarven forges. And in your life, what are you leaving behind? When everything ends, and it will, my friend, what will they say about you? I'm not talking about fame. I'm talking about a living memory, about people who remember you because you changed something in their world, even if it was small. What Balin represents goes beyond Tolkien's fantasy. He is the symbol of those who refuse to accept the end, of those who try even when everything seems doomed, of those who refuse to become a statue in the Museum of Almost. If you have a dream abandoned, an idea forgotten, or a passion asleep, remember Balin. Reopen that cave, light the torch, but be prepared, with wisdom, with allies, and with a perspective that isn't easily fooled by the glitter of mithril. Because as long as someone is there to tell your story, you're never truly dead. And that's when the true power of Middle-earth is revealed. It teaches us that even in the darkest shadows, there's still room for light. And as we'll see later, that light doesn't always come from kings or wizards. Sometimes it comes from forgotten heroes. Now tell me, after everything you've heard, do you still think Balin was just another supporting character? Or was he exactly the kind of hero the real world needs the most? Quiet, stubborn, scarred, but with a heart of solid stone. The truth is, many live as if they were immortal, postponing dreams, hiding from their own battles. Not Balin. He went out and did it, even knowing he might not come back. And you? Which part of your Moria have you not yet had the courage to explore? What battle have you been putting off for fear of failure? Balin's journey isn't just a story. It's a call, an invitation for you to get off your chair, look into the shadows of your life and say, it's now. And if you're scared, go ahead and be scared. Because a hero isn't someone who doesn't feel fear. It's someone who acts despite it. Now, if this story touched you, inspired you, or made you reflect, then don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Here we keep unearthing the forgotten stories of Middle-earth, and maybe your life as well, because in the end, we all have a little bit of Balin within us.